We have lots to talk about here in today's video, including all kinds of NHL trade rumors, including teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs, as well as the St. Louis Blues. A couple of big names in the Blues getting attention in the rumor mill, with the Blues struggling and recently making a big name like Jordan Kyrou a healthy scratch. We also have some trade talk as well around the Buffalo Sabres. We have big news from the NHL waiver wire here today. Joseph Woll has officially spoken to the media and should be returning to the Leafs soon. All kinds of injury and roster move updates, and former NHL head coach Pete Deboer being honored from his former junior club. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots of NHL news and some trade rumors to take a look at here today. If in case you missed the news earlier, I did do a small standalone video earlier on the waivers news, but Primeau of the Toronto Maple Leafs finds himself on waivers today. We'll find out tomorrow afternoon if he's been claimed by another team or if he will be reassigned to the American Hockey League for the Toronto Marlies. The Leafs could also still opt to keep him on the roster as well, but it's unlikely with a pending return here of Joseph Woll. They need to make room for him. He may not go down immediately because Joseph Woll himself, like I said, was speaking to the media today. They did get some updates on his status. Of course, we know he's been back with the team for a little bit, been practicing, skating, and doing all the things he needs to do to be prepared to get back into game action. And he is going down over the weekend here to the Marlies on a conditioning stint. So I believe the expectation would be to play at least one game. If it goes well, maybe he plays two, I don't know, but one for sure. And then he can be recalled from the conditioning stint, which could coincide well with Primeau clearing and then going down. Now, the Leafs do have a game tomorrow night, so I'm not sure if Primeau would be demoted afterwards or how that's all going to work out. We'll have to wait and see, because obviously if he's claimed, then he's gone right away. So now, one thing I did say earlier in the video, because I wasn't sure, because originally Primeau, of course, we know, started his career at the Montreal Canadiens, but was not with the Habs to start the year. He ended up signing a one-year contract with the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, of course, when a player goes on waivers, if you were claimed by another team, then you ended up back on waivers, the original team can claim you or reclaim you and send you directly to their minor league affiliate. Otherwise, any other team has to leave them on the NHL roster. But there is a time frame that has to be met, and I believe it's 30 days. So I think we're just beyond that. So I'm not sure it would make sense for the Hurricanes to reclaim him anyway. Obviously, things have changed in their goaltending since he left. And like I said, if they could put him right to the minor leagues without going through waivers again, then it might make sense. But it just seems to me like a less likely scenario that we see, because I'm pretty sure enough time has passed. I hadn't thought of that on the other video, but I was like, okay, I think we're just beyond that time frame where they can do that. So hard to say how this goes. Primeau's got a 2-1 record this year with 3 appearances for the Maple Leafs. Winning 2 out of 3 games sounds pretty good. But when your save percentage is .838 and you've allowed 4 goals a game, on average, that's not good. The Leafs have been able to outscore the issues. A couple of those games that he was in the net for, I know his first start, wasn't really good. Had some, you could tell there probably was some nerves and some not so great play. And then, like I said, they were able to kind of outscore the opponent anyways, of course, of the high-powered offense. But yeah, it's hard to say what the future holds here for Primeau, but it may not be in Toronto anymore now that we have a returning Joseph Woll. As I mentioned, when he spoke to the media, he thanked everybody for respecting his privacy, thanked the Leafs organization for all the support they offered him and his family during his absence. He did not get into any of the reasons why he was away. So for anybody wondering what was going on, if you're feeling like you need to know that stuff, we don't know. And he's not obligated to say anything. He did say at some point, if he ever decides he's wanting to talk about it, he'll let people know. Otherwise, he's keeping it to himself, which is entirely his right, and we have to respect that. So Joseph Woll did not give us anything in that sense, but that he is ready to come back, and that he's been obviously playing and practicing with the club off the ice and are away from the games, and then he's going to go down for a conditioning stint and hopefully make a return. So the Leafs should get him back here. I would suspect first of the week, but we'll see how everything goes. Now, we also got some other news today. Speaking of players being away from their team, Rasmus Dahlin, the captain of the Buffalo Sabres, is going to be away from the team for, we don't know, an indefinite period of time. Of course, Rasmus Dahlin, in case you're not aware, he and his fiancée were traveling over the offseason, and she ended up in some unexpected health scare situation. And I believe with everything that was going on with her, if I'm not mistaken, I believe she ended up having, I think, like a heart transplant. It was pretty serious. Like in the beginning, they weren't sure what was going on, and it turned out to be a pretty serious situation. It's pretty amazing, to be honest, that he hasn't missed more time than what he has. So, I mean, the fact that he's been able to, get through what he has with the Sabres, it's really, like I said, it's not clear in the least how long Dahlin will be away. I mean, this is a pretty... it's a serious situation. I mean, based on what Lindy Ruff told the media, Dahlin let them know that everything was okay at the time. So it's not like anything real bad has happened that we know of, but we just know that she's dealing with a very serious, complicated health situation that's been ongoing since the offseason, and now he needs to take time away from the team to go back to Sweden to be with her. To get through parts of that. So I'm not sure exactly. We don't know what that's going to mean for him. So we'll just say for now that our thoughts are with him. It's certainly a blow to the Sabres, but everybody understands that family has to come first. I'm sure he's had a difficult time focusing on everything. It's hard to keep your mind, in the right place with all that going on behind the scenes. So thoughts with Rasmus Dahlin and his fiancée, Caroline, I believe her name is, to, hopefully, move forward and have better results and hopefully get through the health situation she's dealing with. Now, as I mentioned, we get a lot of other news around the league today. We'll go through first some injury updates, roster moves, that type of stuff. The Vancouver Canucks recalled goaltender Jiri Patera, sending a little bit of a scare into the Canuck fan base because he was recalled on an emergency basis. Well, you have Kevin Lankinen, and of course you have the injury-riddled Thatcher Demko, who's missed a ton of time the last few years. But according to everything we've heard, doesn't sound like anybody's really dealing with anything serious. Lankinen's not hurt, and this is more of a case of Demko kind of managing his workload, so to speak. So I don't believe there's any reason to panic here, but Patera has been recalled by the Canucks. A scary situation as well involving young Penguins forward Philip Hollander. He's been diagnosed with blood clots in his leg, and he's going to be out for an extended period of time. We've seen, unfortunately, decent amount, I mean not a huge amount, but a handful of players throughout their careers in the NHL here in the last 5, 10, 15 years deal with blood clot situation. I know Steven Stamkos being one of the more prominent names, and it can take a long time to get things to the point where they're able to play and not be at a serious health risk. So they've estimated that he's going to miss about 3 months or more, but it's I think that kind of situation, from what we've seen with other players, it can be really difficult to kind of pinpoint a timeline. So thoughts with him as he deals with this. Hopefully he can resume his career, because if it's not something you can get under control, it can be a career-threatening type of thing. At this point, though, we're not led to believe that that's going to be the case, which hopefully won't, for his sake, won't be the case. The Carolina Hurricanes have sent Bradley Nadeau back to the American Hockey League, another top young player for them that's trying to get more and more NHL time. But for right now, that's probably a good sign for one of their injured forwards, whether it be a guy like Will Carrier, or there's a few guys there battling some fairly serious injuries. That tells me that they're probably getting one of those guys back soon. Cole Smith of the Nashville Predators officially added to injured reserve. The Flyers have recalled forward Carl Grundstrom. The Sabres have recalled defenseman Zach Jones. Of course, that would be to take the Dahlin spot on the roster for the time being. The Red Wings today got Patrick Kane back, who, after a 9-game absence, was back in the lineup for the Red Wings tonight at home as they did battle the New York Rangers. Unfortunately for Detroit, they suffered a 4-1 loss. The Rangers continues to be one of the league's best road teams and one of the league's worst home teams all at the same time. It's a really odd dynamic with the Rangers this year. Overall, I'd say they're not phenomenal, but they keep finding ways to pick up wins on the road. But yet, at home, they've been absolute dog crap. Can't score goals. It's weird. Now, speaking of the New York Rangers, Artemi Panarin, who was I believe it was a 6-game pointless streak. It was been a real struggle for Panarin. Decided to shave his head. We've seen Panarin do this before, and he went off tonight and had, I think it was at least 3 points. I remember I watched most of the game. I know he was involved with at least 3 of the goals. I think it was what he finished with. The game just wrapped up here as I sat down to record this video, so I haven't looked at the score sheet again, but I know he had at least 3. So good night. So I suspect better things to come from the newly shaved Artemi Panarin. And of course, we've heard lots about his future being uncertain with the Rangers, that he wants the biggest payday he can get on his next contract, not willing to take a discount. And it's led many to believe that he's probably not going to be with the Rangers beyond the current season, that he could be a trade candidate, which we've mentioned as well. But for right now, obviously they'll hold off and wait and see what happens here. But yeah, Panarin, regardless of what's going on with the team, for their perspective, it would be good for the Rangers if he's playing better and putting up more points, because it'll help his trade value if they are going to go down that road. And of course, it helps him do better even if they don't. So the Rangers had a good night against the Red Wings. The Minnesota Wild also picked up a win over the New York Islanders. Not a good game for the Islanders, especially against a struggling Wild team that played yesterday. There really should have been a better outcome for the New York Islanders tonight, but they did get Mats Zuccarello back with the Minnesota Wild, making his season debut after missing an extended time due to a preseason injury. So Zuccarello's back for Minnesota. The Habs have returned defenseman Mark Dalgaizo as well back to the AHL. That was mentioned as well. Longtime NHL head coach, currently out of work, but I don't expect that to be for too long. Pete Deboer, most recently coached, of course, the Dallas Stars into the conference finals in the Western Conference last year, which they were in for a few years in a row against the Edmonton Oilers. Pete Deboer being honored by his junior club, where he kind of got his higher level coaching career started with the Kitchener Rangers. Of course, they have what they're introducing now, the level of legacy is what they're calling it. So he, I believe, is the first one to go into that. So Pete Deboer, of course, we know had a pretty good run in junior, then getting the jump afterwards to the AHL. Has coached a bunch of teams. He coached with the Devils, the Panthers, of course, the Dallas Stars, Vegas Golden Knights, and now he's looking for work. So I do expect that at some point this year, we're bound to see one or two coaching changes, and depending on the scenario, I would think if it's a team that has, winning aspirations here in the short term, that it wouldn't be shocking to see Pete Deboer behind a bench sometime before the end of this season. But again, we'll see. He has every right to be particular and, not just jump at any opportunity, but the belief is he's anxious to get back to coaching whenever the next opportunity might come along. Now, as I mentioned as well, a couple of teams we want to look at here in the rumor mill outside of what we've already talked about. We'll start with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Dave Pagnotta of the fourthperiod.com reporting a little bit further some updates on the situation between the Toronto Maple Leafs and centerman David Kampf. Now, of course, we have discussed here yesterday that we had reason to believe, according to Puckpedia and their sources, that David Kampf was suspended by the Leafs without pay for leaving his AHL Marlies team. Of course, we know Kampf was previously put through waivers and was demoted to the American Hockey League. Had been playing down there and just decided that he's had enough of it, doesn't want to play there, just thinks he deserves to be in the NHL, and basically is taking a leave right now while he figures out what's next in his career. Lots of chatter that him and the Leafs may discuss terminating his contract if it means him signing elsewhere and getting a new deal. But of course, like I said before, it's a big risk for him because he's going to lose a lot of money if he does. He still has a little bit of term on that contract, and he's probably not going to get paid as much next one. So unless he's really sure that it's going to reignite his career and it's going to parlay him into his next contract, then it may not make sense. Of course, the preferred solution here is that the Maple Leafs finally find him a trade and they move the contract. He has a chance to play somewhere else, and everybody moves on. I know some teams like the Blackhawks, like maybe the Sharks, and other teams that are a little bit lower in the standings or rebuilding, if you will, might be more of an opportunity. I know even a team like Vancouver was mentioned as a landing spot given their injury situation and lack of depth at the center position. But again, some of these teams are looking for higher end skill at that spot, not another guy who can be a serviceable 4C, because David Kampf typically doesn't give you a whole heck of a lot of offense. He's more of a defensive minded centerman. He's going to give you 10, 11 minutes a night, win a few faceoffs, kill a few penalties, and that's kind of where he's typically used when he plays. So we'll see. Obviously falling out of favor in Toronto, even with the injury to Scott Laughton to start the year, still wasn't getting himself in the lineup. Part of that might be due to salary cap constraints, but I think a lot of it just to do with the fact that they have a ton of forwards, and he's just not one of the preferred guys by Craig Berube. You could tell even last year, in my opinion, the way camp was used, that he just didn't seem real fond of how he fit there. So the expectation from Dave Pagnotta, from what he's saying today, is that there's going to be a likely, of course, no guarantees, but it's quite likely, and are aiming towards having this situation resolved between both sides by the end of the weekend. So over the next couple of days, it's expected we're either going to see a trade with him move to another team, or maybe they do decide to terminate the contract, make him a free agent, and he can sign somewhere else. But again, he's going to lose a lot of money that way. I'm not really convinced at this point that that's the smartest decision for him, even though he wants to play in the NHL. But time will tell. Now, a couple of other teams we want to look at. We'll go quickly to the Sabres and then touch on the Blues. The Sabres, we know, have a goaltending situation where they have more than enough guys. According to Elliotte Friedman, that they are actively trying to move on from Alexander Georgiev. Now, as I mentioned, I don't know why they ever signed him. They could have brought him in on a PTO and then released him. And of course, I think there was a little bit of concern over the injury to UPL going into the season, if he was going to miss time or whatnot. And they ended up signing Georgiev. And then yet, he's never really factored into their plans. They have Alex Lyon, and then they were able to get Colton Ellis as well, who they are fond of. Now, with Colton Ellis, they've given him a housing letter confirming that he's going to be with the club and told him to get a place to live. So some teams usually do that, so that if they ended up trying to demote him later or putting him through waivers, it just kind of makes them more obligated to pay with some relocation expenses. And they're not expected to do that. So Ellis is expected to stay. Then you've got Alex Lyon under contract, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen under contract. So then you get Georgiev, and then you get Levi in the minors. And there was reports that Levi would be welcome to finding a trade so he can have a chance at the NHL. So again, more than enough goaltenders in Buffalo. Georgiev is by far more of a problematic contract given, his state of his game in the last few years, where he's at. Levi is a situation where I don't think they feel obliged or rushed to moving him, but it's certainly somebody that we've heard would welcome a trade. But again, we don't know the status of that. But the Sabres are actively in the goaltending market trying to shed contracts. So we'll see where that goes. Now, lots of chatter around St. Louis. Frank Seravalli was talking about the Blues today on his program, saying that general manager Doug Armstrong has made it well known to the other 31 NHL teams that he is open for business. And he says to keep an eye on a guy like Captain Braden Shen, who went from a no-move clause to a modified no-trade, blocking 15 teams. And not only that, but Shen is a highly sought-after player that a lot of teams were looking into last year. They opted not to move him. I think a lot of that was Shen's personal choice. Shen was a player who last year had more control in his contract and wanted to stay because he felt like he could help get this Blues team into the playoffs, which they ended up doing. Of course, Shen, like I said yesterday, was linked to teams like Toronto, New Jersey, I think to some degree Ottawa. So, we'll see what happens with Captain Braden Shen. But according to Frank Seravalli, he is very much a highly interested player that teams are going to be calling on and have already likely done so to some degree. Now, Dave Pagnotta is also mentioning that, not just Pagnotta, but Friedman as well, both talking about Jordan Kyrou today. Of course, Friedman said that he believes that they came pretty close to trading Kyrou. Now, we were following that situation closely leading into July 1st when his no-move clause would have kicked in. There was a lot of chatter between the days leading to the NHL draft and then the week between the draft and free agency that Kyrou was not a guarantee to be moved, but that there was a lot of chatter around the player, and it was a very likely scenario that we might see played out. It never ended up happening. His no-move clause kicked in, but Friedman reports today on his podcast that he believes there was a deal pretty close to being in place, that the Seattle Kraken were the team that was being aggressive to add Kyrou to their mix, and it would have involved their first-round pick in the 2025 draft, which I believe was 8th overall, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a high pick, and it doesn't mean that was not necessarily 1-for-1, but that high pick was on the table in a trade for Jordan Kyrou. Now, ultimately never happened. We know that the Kraken, again, are a team that Friedman made mention in his latest podcast and blog, saying that they had a pretty good start to the season, largely due to the good defensive play and structure that Lane Lambert has brought to the organization. And don't be surprised if you see the Kraken make a trade to try to add another offensive weapon to their arsenal because they don't score enough. And, obviously they could be an even better team if they were stronger offensively. So a guy like Kyrou certainly fits that bill. Friedman also goes on to say that, with the cap increase that we've seen for the current season and now what we have that's projected for the next couple years, that Kyrou $8 million contract not really viewed upon as being negative anymore just because he was healthy scratched as well. Doesn't mean he's on the trade block like today, right now, or anything close like that. It just means that the coach is trying to send a message to him and the other veterans that they need more out of their guys and that the way they've been playing is not acceptable. Obviously Kyrou is a player that I expect to get back in the lineup here in the next 1 or 2 games and probably make the most of it. We'll probably see an improved result. That's usually how a guy like that responds. But at the same time, like I said, there's lots of chatter that teams are definitely inquiring on players like him as well as Braden Shen. Justin Falk's name apparently out there to some degree as well. Not to say that there couldn't be others. I know we mentioned about the possibility. That was just me wondering about Binnington. But at this point, we don't have any rumors from the top reporters suggesting that Binnington's in play. But I wonder how things will change throughout the year depending on where things go for the Blues over the next 4 to 6 weeks here. So it's going to be interesting. I know when it comes to Kyrou, besides the Kraken, Paynota was reporting that the Islanders and the Habs were the other 2 teams that were reportedly had a bunch of conversations around that player going into before his no trade kicked in July 1, the no move clause. So we had heard lots about Montreal before, and to be honest, it wouldn't shock me if any of these teams decided to kind of re-engage in those conversations. So could it be Montreal? Could it be Seattle? Could it end up being the Islanders? The Islanders are probably less likely at this point, but we know Montreal is a possibility to add, having a good start to the year. It certainly wouldn't be shocking if the Kraken wanted to add an offensive weapon as well. And there's other teams too. There really is. Again, look to the Maple Leafs. The Leafs have a top 6 forward opening that they are waiting for somebody to really grab that spot. Now, Matias Maccelli played really well after being healthy scratched, playing against his former team in Utah there the other night. But will he be able to hold that down and be a consistent player for them? Time will tell, I guess. We'll see. But obviously Kyrou has history with Berube, so another familiar face. I think he is also a type of player that could play well with that top 6 in Toronto too. So again, there's lots of teams to me that make sense for this guy. Just a matter of if they pull the trigger or not. But according to Armstrong and Sarah Valley and the guys reporting on the Blues, they are very much open for business and all the big names are in play. Just a matter of they pull the trigger or not here in the next coming week. So we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.